I, the Lord of sea and sky, I have heard my people cry, all who dwell in deepest pain, my hand will save. I who made the stars of night, I will make their darkness bright. Who will bear my light to them? Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. I, the Lord of snow and rain, I have borne my people's pain. I have wept in love of them. They turn away. I will break their hearts of stone, give them hearts of love alone. I will speak my word to them. Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. I, the Lord of wind and flame, I will tend the poor and lame. I will set a feast for them. My hand will save. Finest bread I will provide, till their hearts be satisfied. I will give my life to them. Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart.
Does God have something to say about caring for those who are displaced from their homes?
Let's listen to what God's Spirit is saying.
In Exodus, we hear about our responsibilities as people of faith.
Do not oppress a foreigner. You yourselves know how it feels to be foreigners, because you were foreigners in Egypt.
In Leviticus, we read that we must respect other people.
When a foreigner resides among you in your land, do not mistreat them. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself.
And in Proverbs, we hear about our obligation as people with privilege.
Speak out for those who cannot speak, for the right of all the destitute.
And in Matthew, Jesus said,
For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me.
Here ends the reading of words that give us insight on God.
Grant us wisdom and courage for interpretation.
Thank you so much for having us here today. As the Reverend said at the beginning, my name is Etleva Bejko, and I'm the Refugee and Immigration Director at Jewish Family Service. And along with me is my Senior Director, Joel Craddock. Thank you for being here. And again, thank you for having us. I knew that you were going to focus this service today on refugees, as the World Refugee Day is coming up on June 20th. But I'm really touched to hear everything that was said today, and especially the reading, because it speaks to what we do every day, and just this day that is coming up is reminding us how important that the work that we do is. Jewish Family Service was actually established from a group of women from the community who identified the needs of refugees that were fleeing Europe during World War I. They first started providing food and clothing, and then shelter, and then employment services to those people that had just left without nothing, just to protect their life and their families. And today, it's almost 100 years later. We're celebrating 100 years next year, and still, although the organization has grown to serve more than 30,000 people in the San Diego community that deal with food security issues, with transportation issues, refugee work remains one of the core services of our organization. And that's because not only it's relevant, but it's also important. It's relevant because I'm sure you guys have heard this phrase being used so often, that the world is facing the hugest humanitarian crisis that it has seen ever, even larger than during World War II. There are more than 65 million displaced people throughout the world, in their own countries, in other countries, and they're fleeing war, distraction, discrimination, famine. Only 21.3 of those are actually under the protection of United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, which is called UNHCR. That group is those people that are actually seeing war and have picked up their families and fled to another country and are waiting for years in the hopes that things would become safe again and they could one day return home. And as we all know, for so many years, this has not been true for quite a few of them. And while they are trying to build a life in the country that they are residing in, and when that hope is also gone, for some of them, resettlement in a third country is the only option, and in some cases, it truly is the difference between life and death. Only 1% of those people actually do get a chance to be resettled in another country. 1% of 21.3 get a chance to restart their life for their families and their children all over. And it remains important to Jewish Family Service of San Diego to continue to do this work, because based on the Jewish values of welcoming a stranger, which obviously it's a value of everyone, and repairing the world, we continue providing services for refugees that have been uprooted, have lost all sense of safety and sense of control over their life, and then they are here and they are trying to figure out what to do with the next chapter of their life and how to deal with the new challenges that they are facing. I don't have hours to explain to you guys everything that we do and what the needs of those populations are, but I'll tell you a story of one of my cases that I dealt with directly. I started doing this work in 1999. I'm originally from Albania, in case you're wondering where that accent is coming from. And although I did not come to this country as a refugee, I did flee my country in the early 90s. Albania was a communist system, and it suffered under a dictatorship regime for 45 years. So as the system started breaking down throughout Eastern Europe, a lot of people saw hope in starting life anew in another country. I lived for 4 years in Germany, actually, where I did seek political asylum. There was no refugee program back then. And unfortunately, the country conditions did not allow for such. So the choice was between having to go back home or figure out another way to actually not have to. So there was nothing to go back to. We all hoped that someday it would be better and we would get a chance to go back, you see, as I call it, still home. But unfortunately, that was not an option. And although I did not really want to cross the ocean and get so far and restart life all over again and learn another language and learn a completely new system, I was forced to. And to be honest, it was the best decision of my life. Our country is still suffering under corruption 25 years later, and it's unfortunate to hear from my peers there that they are still trying to figure out ways to just build somewhere life for their children especially. So when I got here under a visa program, so that's why I meant that I didn't come as a refugee, I still had to figure out a whole new system, how to navigate, how to actually interact with people. And while I was trying to figure that out for myself, a lot of refugees from Kosovo, and for those of you that don't know, they're ethnic Albanians in ethnic land, and when the former Yugoslavia was breaking down, quite a few of them came to United States to resettle because of the war that was happening in former Yugoslavia, and that's how I got involved. Trying to give back to that community, and also whatever I had to learn on my own to give a hand to people that just came and had lived such a horrible tragedy in their country, and you know, amongst all of that, they had to deal with the trauma of the war they left, the trauma of being refugees, and now a whole new set of challenges. And a few years after that, I had a family from Afghanistan, a single mother. She had 4 children, and she was very sick. She was having epilepsy episode all the time and seizures, and the children were the ages between 11 and 4. It was my case, and every time I would go there, the oldest son, the 11-year-old, was the one that was taking care of everybody. And as I was helping the family settle and figure out their community and how to access services and how to connect to new ongoing services, I always wondered what is going to happen to the 11-year-old, because now he is taking such adult responsibilities, and the mother truly needed to be held by her hand for everything that we did. What I did not know at that time was that the father and the husband was killed in front of the family. And that's why they were living all that trauma. I stayed with the family for as long as I could. We have programs that are federally funded, so I had new clients coming in which I needed to pay attention to. But for some reason, that family kind of stayed with me for a much longer time. After 2 or 3 years that I was just keeping tabs on how they were doing, and of course things were getting a little bit better and they were taking care, the children were enrolled in school, I got them connected with a volunteer that could be staying with them. I kind of lost track, and they had moved, so I didn't know how the family was doing, and once in a while I would wonder, I hope that guy went to college, and I don't want his life to be dedicated to raising his siblings, because it was obvious that he would take such adult responsibilities. And then 2 years ago, I walked into my Rite Aid in my neighborhood, and as I went to the cashier, the guy that was helping me, purchase my items said to me, "Is your name Etleva?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "You are my caseworker when I used to live in El Cajon." And I said to him, what's your name? Obviously, he had his name here, but I didn't think to look. And he said, oh, my name is Hassan. And I said, okay, what's your mother's name? Because Hassan is such a common name, and now this is like 12 years later, so he obviously had changed. And he said, Alizada. And her name is unique, it's different. So I knew, and I'm like, oh my God, how are you guys doing? He said, well, I'm graduating from college this year. And my brother is playing varsity football, hoping to get scholarship somewhere. My sisters are doing great, and my mom is healthy, and she's a shift manager at Bernardo Inn. And I swear I had tears in my eyes when I walked out of the store, and I had nothing to do with it. They did it all on their own, obviously, but I felt a little bit of relief and so much pride for what they've been through and how far they had come from the moment that I met them until 12, 13 years later. And sometimes doing this work, we forget that the impact that the refugees have on us is probably bigger than the impact we have on them. And we are aware as social workers that provide refugee services that although we play a very small role, it is such a great pleasure to be part of the journey where they actually find that new home, that sense of security back, and they start rebuilding their life and take control of their life in the new country. And based on all the values that I saw it's so wonderful to have such a warm and welcoming community that helps us every day to do that work and help the refugees to actually succeed, because most of them do. And I think on the Refugee Day, it's very, very important to recognize what they've been through, but mostly celebrate all the achievements and everything they give back to the new community that they call home. Thank you so much for having me here.